Hello, it's time for Combat Patrol Carnage. Hello everyone, we're back with issues 73, 74, and it's time for us to do our lore dive. So we've got quite a few pages to cover in this video. So we've got two short stories. Our first one features the Chaos Knights. We then learn about the fall of Cadian, and we have our naming charts for our Astra Militarum units. Then in issue 74, our second short story kicks off with the Throne of Ashes, seeing the Imperial world come under the eye of the Inquisition. And that's pretty much it. We don't have our second battle record to name our second squad of Cadians. I'm also bringing in issue 71 so we can name our command squad's captain. So before we head to the table and do our reading, don't forget to, of course, do all the usual. Like this video if you're enjoying the content, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and of course, drop me a comment down below. I love hearing back from you guys, especially about what you're doing in your hobby and how you're getting on with your Combat Patrol journey. Finally, Combat Patrol Carnage is proudly sponsored by warbay.shop, your one-stop supply for all your hobby needs. They stock everything you need for getting started and expanding your forces. Of course, applying all those essential colours to your force as well. And they stock Combat Patrol magazines, so if you're looking for some extra issues, check them out. They might have the ones you're looking for. Link, as usual, is in the video description. Right, let's head to the table and we'll read up our latest lore and name our units. Hello everyone, welcome back to issues 73 and 74 then. We are here with our Rinsguard. I've also got issue 71 off to the side so that we can name our command squad, as we have the naming chart to name our Cadian units. So, right, we'll put these squads off to the side, then we'll adjust the camera so we can dive right on into our new bits of lore. So, back to issue 73 first of all, then past our build guides for our two squads. And here we are. So we got, first off, a nice bit of short fiction featuring the Chaos Knights. To pilot a Chaos Knight is to fuse one's body with machines for eternity. Knights of Ruin Nation, with twisted oaths of honour upon their lips, fallen nobles and wretched scions ride into battle from within cursed, warp-racked steeds known as Chaos Knights. These fell machines are haunted by the spirits of their former scions, and to pilot one is to accept an agonizing, lifelong fusion with the very machine itself. Rip, crush, and tear the unworthy. This embodied snarls of ancient heretic nobles resonated deep within the synapses of Lady Marine Kephis's mind as the neural jacks upon her skull interfaced with the infernal workings of her Chaos Knight. Rend their mortal flesh and sunder their armour, lest you drink deep of consequence. Warpack, prepare for combat drop, Kephis Vox hailed to her fellow scions. We leave none alive. Beside her were four vicious war dog walkers, stamping and growling in their eagerness for battle. At her words, each one unleashed a voracious howl that filled the holds of the World Eater's vessel that had transported them here. The warlords Abominatus had embarked upon a bloody assault on the industrial world beneath them, and the warband had entreated Cephas to join them in the slaughter. The tension prior to the hunt always filled her with an unspeakable bloodlust, and the night rampager she piloted stirred restlessly in the confines of the drop casket that would soon speed them both into battle. Soon, slaughter beast, she spoke softly to the machine, as if to placate its violent impulses. "We will reap a fine tally this day." Pistons hissed and the gargantuan bulkheads opened, and the drop caskets thundered towards the planet's surface, tearing through the blanket of smog and smoke that concealed their arrival. She and her hounds would soon join in battle. As the drop caskets broke through the firmament, the field of battle rushed towards them at dizzying speed. Below, battle raged like wildfire. Deafening artillery scarred the earth with heavy shells, and miles of trenches snaked across the world's surface. The soldiers of the Astra Militarum packed each of the fortifications to the brim, las fire raining down on encroaching heretics. Fighting alongside the humans were the vainglorious Ultramarines, who were charging to meet the World Eaters in vicious melee. "The field is rich," Kefis hissed to her retinue over the vox-link. "Let us hunt." The very ground itself trembled as the diabolical war machines made impact on the scar-racked battlefield. The Imperial forces, not immediately turned into red mist in the wake of the landing, were thrown violently into the dirt and buried beneath it. To Kefis's left stood Agrafe and Halef, piloting Malignance and Clawbite. To her right were Gaianes and Veren, piloting Profanus and Malevolence. Around them, cornate warriors surged forward into the Imperium's defensive formations. Chain blades locked in bitter combat. A storm of bolter and lasfire converged on the newly arrived knights, and they roared in defiance as they charged into the fray. Before Kefis cowered Cadian soldiers, terror filled their eyes as they attempted to scramble back to their trench. With a swipe of a warp-strike claw, they were quickly erased in a red smear. Their screams snuffed in an instant. "Knights, forward!" Kefis barked. She was soon answered by the sound of heavy treads and the whine of chain cannons spinning up. Malignance and Malevolence relished the order, their heavy chain cannons filling the air with a punishing hail of heavy munitions. Before them, scores of Cadians were shredded, whole platoons falling like wheat before the scythe. Gurgling, distorted laughter choked across the local Vox network as the spirits within their fell machines howled with sick delight. Clawbite and Profanus had broken ranks upon the order, charging forward to the first of many trenches that lay before them. Their talon-like feet crushed the trench walls with ease. Profanus swung a slaughter claw into the trench wall, impaling two humans upon razor-sharp talons. Bolter fire thudded off the armor shell of Clawbite, and the beast turned with unerring speed to meet it. Ahead, 5 Ultramarines charged toward the trench, their chain blades whining as they fired upon the knight with heavy bolt pistols. The Reaper chain talon mounted at the top upon the Clawbite's arm spun with a bestial growl of its own, and Clawbite swung in to meet the oncoming Space Marines. His blood-stained teeth bit deep into ceramite, and sparks flew before giving way to arcs of crimson blood. Ahead of the pack, Imperial armor approached. Slaughterbeast strode forward to meet them, crushing several warriors locked in bloody melee before them. Heavy plasma fire from the armored sentinels sent shudders through the night, scoring its armor. The damage was superficial, but she would avenge the insult nonetheless. Slaughterbeast reached out to the claw and grasped the sentinel's frame, the immense force buckling the machine's armor easily. The knight swung its Reaper chainsword around in a huge arc and into the arm of the sentinel's cockpit. The blade's teeth and the Imperial armor burned white hot for a moment before the blade sliced through completely. Kefis had only an instant to savour the screams of the pilot before another sound cut across them. A deep mechanical voice bellowed across the field. "Face me, heretic! This world will be your tomb." Slaughterbeast turned its gaze to meet the challenger. Adorned with the blue of the hateful Ultramarines, a Redemptor dreadnought stood before her, its weapons poised in readiness. "A challenge must be met. Accept." Kefis's mind jolted in agony as the voices spoke. "Uphold our honour, lest you drink deep of consequence." Kefis spurred her knight forward in response, swinging Slaughterbeast's chain weapon around to strike. The loyalist war machine dodged her attack with surprising agility, and her weapon buried itself in the earth where it had just been standing. Cursing, she fought to free the chain blade as its spinning teeth churned the ground below. The dreadnought unleashed a gout of fire from its heavy flamer, engulfing Slaughterbeast in flame. The ancient geists shrieked in outrage, and Kefis finally wrenched the chain weapon free. The momentum of the action carried the blade in a wild, swinging arc. It struck a blow against the dreadnought's armor plating, sending the machine reeling backwards. Even as it fought to regain its footing, the Astartes war machine unleashed a hissing salvo of Icarus rockets, each connecting with the Slaughterbeast's armoured chestplate in fiery conflagration. Buffeted by each blow, the knight staggered back across the battlefield, and Kefis snarled. The heavy stubbers upon Slaughterbeast's shoulders opened fire in retaliation, punching holes in the thick plumes of smoke enveloping the knight. "Cut the Astartes down, Scion! You will honour your oath!" The chorus grew restless as Kefis's afflicted mind burned. Slaughterbeast charged through the gloom, claws outstretched and grasping for the enemy. Its talons met the armoured plate of the dreadnought, biting deep, and the knight howled with relish. Kefis lifted the machine from the earth, screaming with the effort, and slammed it back down in a crash of buckling metal. "Yes, yes, crush the unworthy!" The frenzied voices trapped within Slaughterbeast rose to a crescendo, and Kefis's mind pulsed with the thrill of the slaughter. Even as cables snapped and sparks flew from its crumpling form, the dreadnought struck out to its power fist and fired wildly with its flamer. Kefis's cracked lips peeled back a cruel smile. She could taste victory just as Slaughterbeast's warp-strike claw breached the dreadnought's sarcophagus. The voice of the Astartes within spoke out defiantly once more. "This wood will be your tomb!" With its final ounce of strength, it raised its arms to bury the barrel of its macroplasma incinerator below the cockpit of Kefis's machine, and fired. The superheated plasma punched a hole straight through Slaughterbeast's chest. The machine beast shrieked, reeling backwards from the fallen dreadnought. Kefis howled as the feedback from the blow flooded her mind. Her steed collapsed to one knee, and her screams were joined by the chorus of the ancient geists. Some wailed in grief and others in pain, but all in fury. "You have failed, Scion, you dishonour your noble house. You have failed your ancient line." Jolts of pain shot through Kefis's body as the neural jacks in her skull and spine violently disconnected. Her throwing mechanicum was failing. No, it was rejecting her. Her body contorted and twisted, bones snapping and the flesh tearing. She screamed until the last of her breath left her in a rattling wheeze. The last thing she heard, her synapses racked with torment, was the judgment of Slaughterbeast's former masters. "Drink deep of consequence, Scion. You are unworthy of your steed." Ooh, rather nice and lengthy story there with the Chaos Knights and our first taste of the World Eaters. So, pretty cool story, really nice. Love how the past pilots of the ship are speaking to the current pilot there, and yeah, really shows how twisted the honour of the Chaos Knights are compared to the Imperial Knights, who share much more of a symbiotic connection with their machines. Moving on then, we've got our next read article on the Astra Militarum. This is the Fall of Cadia. Creed orders a last stand against Abaddon's forces during the fall of Cadia. So we got a Kazakin sergeant there, a shock trooper sergeant, Kazakin squads, shock trooper squads, a Circa Creed, and Collar Sergeant Kell there, standing defiant as Abaddon rips Cadia to pieces. The fortress world of Cadia stood strong for thousands of years, a formidable imperial bastion against the teeming horrors that emerged from the Eye of Terror. Even after its destruction, the name of Cadia endures across the Imperium as a byword for defiance, and its legacy still lives on in the brave Cadian shock troops. It was the apex of Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade that Cadia fell. For millennia, the legendary fortress world had defended the Imperium from the incursions of the forces of chaos. Time and again, the people of Cadia fought defiantly against its would-be conquerors, but the final Black Crusade of Abaddon the Despoiler saw it beset by a truly apocalyptic assault. Hordes of the lost and damned, entire regiments of traitor guard, legions of heretic Astartes, and ancient engines of world-ending power. Despite the odds, the Cadians could not relinquish control of their world easily. The Cadian shock troops stoically held the line against the heretical warriors, while their tank divisions hammered the invaders with thunderous gunfire. The forces of chaos were unleashed in numbers not seen since the Horus Heresy, but the Imperial lines held to the last. It was for this reason, and the indomitable spirit of its defenders, that the mantra of Cadia stands became a rallying cry of defiance in the face of Abaddon's brutal, crushing assault. Once the colonel of the Cadian 8th, Usurkar Creed rose to the rank of Lord Castellan following a series of assassinations of Cadian High Command at the onset of the 13th Black Crusade. Despite shoring up the planet's defences and calling upon reinforcements from the Sisters of Battle and the Space Marines, the planet would ultimately fall. It was when conflict on the world was at its bloodiest that Abaddon the Despoiler sent a colossal blackstone fortress crashing into the planet. As the vessel struck with all of the impact of a meteor, its continents would shift, racking the surface with firestorms, tsunamis, and hurricanes. In an act of selfless bravery, Creed vowed to evacuate as many souls as possible. Of the billions deployed in defense of doomed Cadia, only 3 million escaped, and the Lord Castellan was not amongst those evacuated. No, he was captured in a Pokeball by Pokemon trainer Trazan the Infinite. Though their homeworld has been utterly sundered, the will and resolve of the Cadians remain yet unbroken. Indeed, the loss of their homeworld has spurred many to fight the enemies of the Imperium with renewed fervour, whether in full-strength forces of their own, or inducted into the ranks of other Astra Militarum regiments. The survivors of Cadia continue to fight on countless fronts across the galaxy. And so the legacy of Cadia lives on, a true living legend among humanity's armies. Stories of Lord Castellan Creed's heroic last stands are told in trenches, barracks, and officers' quarters across the Imperium. And it is often said that the planet broke before the Guard did. This mantra inspires resolve in the face of horrifying odds, and serves as a reminder that while a single Cadian soldier continues to fight, Cadia still stands. So yeah, there we go. Just because the planet's gone doesn't mean Cadia itself is. We see a beautiful Imperial host there. This is a fairly oldish artwork piece, as we have the older style Sentinel there. But we have things like Imperial Knights, the newer depictions of the Des Mechanicus there. And yeah, so we've got the Guard there, led by a Commissar, as they charge forward against a unforeseen enemy. So, speaking of Astra Militarum regiments, we now have the units titles page. So, Astra Militarum units. Naming your models and units is a great way to build a connection with them and forge exciting narratives. You can use the tables on the next page to create names for your Astra Militarum units, including the ones in the Combat Patrol collection and any you add to your army in the future. So we roll dice twice, once to get the row and then once to get a column, which will give us the name. So what we can do is we'll flip over and we'll bring in issue 71. And we can name our captain. So I'll put a bit of paper behind. So I have looked at the list and I have kind of chosen one if we don't get a good result. So here we go. Let's roll and see what we get. We got a 2. Come on. And a 6. Hey, we've actually got the name I was going to go for, which is Vanya. So this is Captain Vanya. And her command squad is known as 2 again, followed by 5, the Redoubtables. So Captain Vanya and the Redoubtables join my Astra Militarum force. And we've got our first shock troop squad here. So let's find our sergeant. So our first sergeant, so this is going to be for our gunnery squad, which is technically my second squad because I've got no number on the bottom. But here we go, we got a 3 and a 5, so Cobra Vaughn. And her squad is going to be a 6, followed by 2, Cobra Vaughn's Crack Team. So, pretty well named, I think. So we've built and we've painted the squad, and we'll be playing with the next issue, so we'll tick that off. So we've got to read a little bit about the shock troops, and we'll take a look at our data sheet. So Cadian shock troops form the backbone of the front lines of the Astra Militarum. They are the men and women who face the unspeakable horrors of the 41st millennium with little more than a lasgun in their hand and grim resolve. Numbered in the millions to face them is to face a relentless, grinding assault. And we've got our data sheet here. So this is the next data sheet for our Astra Militarum collection. Contains all the information you need to field your Cadian shock troops. So we've actually got all the weapons here, as we will only get 1 data card for these guys, but we have the 2 different squads which have different loadouts. So this squad has the drum-fed autogun, the grenade launcher, and the plasma gun. So we've got all the profiles here. They have a movement of 6, a toughness of 3 as they're only human, a 5+ save, 1 wound, leadership of 7+, and objective control of 2. And then we've got a close combat weapon, dagger, for our sergeant here. And then we have infantry, battle line, Imperium, regiment, platoon, Cadian, and Cadian shock troops are their keywords, no abilities, and we have Astra Militarum as their faction keyword there. So there we go. Right, we'll move on to issue 74. Into issue 74 then, past our paint guide. And here we have our next read articles. So another short story, Throne of Ashes. On Nova Arstrad 7, Baron Cutler has spent many years hiding from plague in his decaying palace. His brother has usurped his position and the planet has fallen behind in its tithe. But at last, it seems salvation has arrived in the form of the Inquisition. A cold light penetrated the corridor, illuminating the crumbling plasterwork. The gilding had peeled off long ago, and the remaining paint had faded into blocky colours, looking not so much like the fine art of a palace as a mural painted by a child on their playroom wall. Amid a faint swirl of dust, Baron Cutler strode down the corridor, his eldest son, a slim boy of 18, in his wake. "You will not speak to him," Cutler barked. "I will instruct him of our peril, and he will have the strength to venture outside amid the plague to bring down his wrath on those who challenge us. Soon my brother will kneel before me and accept his rightful place." Jace trotted to keep up with his father. "Will Uncle Jax come back here?" he asked. "He will be brought back here," corrected his father.
Our desperate hails have been answered, and by his grace the God Emperor has sent me a champion. My name shall live on, and when you have a son, you too will see that your reign only holds its meaning when you can pass it on to your line. That is why we rule." "But what about the people?" asked Jace in surprise. "Do we not rule for them?" Baron Cutler stopped abruptly. "The people?" he asked, and a mocking tone entered his words. "Too long have I trusted your education to others. When did we last speak?" House Cutler. Baron Cutler is the hereditary ruler of Nova Asteroid 7. Although it is nominally an imperial planet, in fact, its only role in humanity's great empire is to supply a tithe of soldiers to the ranks of the Astra Militarum. In return, its ancient rulers are left to act as they wish, but once they lapsed in their duty, it was only a matter of time before an agent of the Imperium would arise to investigate the deficiency and restore the tithe. The decaying cities of Nova Asteroid 7 stand a testament to the glory of days long past. Inquisitor Lex Acosta. The operatives of the Inquisition answer to only the Emperor himself. They are free to follow their instinct and intuition, to discover and prosecute heresy and treachery wherever they find it. Inquisitors are aided by a retinue of loyal servants who are committed to their holy cause. Fearing that Nova Asteroid 7 had turned away from the holy truth of the imperial cult, or even fallen into the grips of chaos, Inquisitor Acosta decided to investigate. His wrath increased when he discovered that there was no evident reason why the planet had failed to meet its obligations. "Almost 4 months back, Father," said Jace, "when you appointed Master Rhinax." "And what foolish ideas your tutor had been filling your head with," Cutler said in annoyance, as he began striding forward again. "The people serve us." Cutler rounded a final bend and made it to his study. Jace, still trotting on behind him. Thoughts of his books flitted through his mind. He was wondering which one he should allow himself to be discovered casually pursuing when their guest arrived. A challenging question, since he had never read any of them. Perhaps he should be found poring over some intricate map, something that would indicate the sophistication and elevated intellect. He was, therefore, extremely put out to find that his guest had already arrived, installed himself in Baron Cutler's chair behind his desk, and was flicking through a book at high speed. Clearly not reading it, just bending back the pages and letting them flick open one by one in front of him. With a great flourish, he held the book out at arm's length, dropped it into the pile of already discarded books, and picked up the next. I see you found your way in," stuttered Cutler, surprised at how cowed he felt in his own office. The man behind the desk gave no signs of having heard him, but stirring in corners of the room alerted Cutler to the presence of others. They were dressed like the man in the chair, but somehow less impressive. Where he wore plate armor and delicate cloak over rich clothes adorned with seals and talismans, they wore simpler armor over plain black leather. "Won't you all—" Cutler's voice trailed off. Where were the palace guards? "Who is that with you?" asked the man in the chair, still not looking directly at Cutler. My son," said Cutler after a pause. "Then let me instruct your son in the duties of an imperial world." To Cutler's horror, Jace tried to rise to the occasion. "We were just discussing that the people must be made to—" Cutler turned furious eyes on his son, but the man in the chair cut him off. "Your duty is to the Emperor alone, and all that is required of you is to submit the tithe that is due. I, Inquisitor Acosta, will make sure that you do." "The people betray us," spat Cutler. "There is rebellion, there is plague, there is death. We have cut ourselves off here that we might return the planet to service of the Imperium." You admit to presiding over a rebellion? Asked Acosta, a mischievous smile playing on his lips. No, I... Then perhaps the truth is that you preside over nothing. At this, Cutler drew himself up, red-faced and sweating. I am the head of my house, a house that has stood for generations in the service of the Imperium. You will aid me and restore the dignity of the planet. I shall certainly restore the dignity of the planet, replied Acosta. But that has little to do with anything happening outside these walls. When did you last venture beyond the confines of your palace? The word hung nastily in the air, and Cutler flapped his mouth up and down ineffectually. Because, continued Acosta, they seem to be doing just fine without you. Thriving, in fact, under the stewardship of your brother, who has taken over in your absence. It is a lie, snapped Cutler, as the words stung him. Acosta rose from behind the desk, and Cutler cowered. Go, see for yourself, Acosta commanded. Be gone. And Cutler turned tail and ran, leaving Jace behind him. He had not gone far when a figure loomed from the shadows. For a second, Cutler dared to hope that it might be one of his guards. But his heart sank as he saw that it was a stranger, one of Acosta's agents. There being no sense in running, he stopped and waited for the man to seize him. Instead, the stranger gestured to Cutler to pass. Go on, he said. Your people await. What trickery is this? Asked Cutler, trying to hold himself from trembling. Do you wait for me to pass so that you may shoot me in the back like the cowards you are? Like the coward I am, said the man in apparent surprise. I am not the one who is fleeing. And I am not the one who is armed, nor aided by so many comrades, retorted Cutler. There is no bravery in such an overwhelming advantage. No, indeed, said the man, but I am granting you your freedom. However, you must remember that my lord holds your son, and one of you must serve your punishment. Go, be free. We have all wagered on the choice you will make, and it is in my interest to let you leave. Head bowed and tears stinging his cheek, Cutler turned, and, pulling against a lifetime habit of pure self-interest, he returned to his office with the agent. Acosta gave Cutler a curious look as he returned, as though acknowledging a grudging respect. But then his face hardened again. I see, he said. My lord, have mercy, begged Cutler, but Acosta gave him no sign of having heard. Your only grace is that your brother may be ruler apparent, but he has not seen fit to pay the tithe either, so because it amuses me, I will leave your son here in this place to contest his new kingdom. But I warn all present here that if the tithe is not paid by one or the other, then I shall return. You will let my son live? Asked Cutler with doubtful hope. Indeed, said Acosta, but a true man must start from nothing. At his words, his agents swarmed out from the shadows and let loose with bolter and flamer, decimating the palace around them. They fired into the walls and the roof, sending splintered wood and crumbling masonry flying. Soon a fire had kindled in the wreckage. The smell of smoke filled the ruins, mingled with the choking dust. As Cutler was grabbed and his hands were bound, he saw Acosta turning to Jace. Behold, my little lord, he said, leering, your throne of ashes. And there we see just how dark and twisted the Imperium can be. Rather nice story, really enjoy it, especially when the Inquisition are involved. So, moving on, we've got our second collect article for our Cadian shock troop unit. So let's bring my paper in. And we need the table from the previous issue. Alright, dice and pen ready. So, our second squad of shock troopers led by Sergeant, starting from a 3. And going with a 3, Dovor. So Dovor, and his epithet for his unit is a 4, followed by also a 4, Grass Snakes. Not the best. I think because they use a lot of flamers, let's go with firebrands instead. So Dovor's firebrands. And again, we've built, painted, and we've played with them. Or we will be next video. And there we have it. So just a quick look. So this squad, same stats, but equipment-wise, we have a flamer, a las gun on all of our regular troops, as well as las pistols. Did I mention the las guns, or did I ever skip that? Yeah, the las guns are there. Las pistol for our sergeant, melter gun then for our second special weapon trooper. Then we have a chainsword for our sergeant and close combat weapons for everybody else. So that is it for these 2 issues for our lore articles. Up next then, we've got 3 pages, I think, of the campaign to check. And then we get to try out our Cadians on the battlefield. I've also got a bonus video to do because my delivery arrived while I was in the midst of naming our first squad. So if there's a funny break in between, that is why. So yeah, we'll play through our scenario, then I can get on and film our unboxing. So without further ado, all that's left me to do is say thank you all very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video and our latest lore and stories, and I will see you next time for more Combat Patrol Carnage. Goodbye.